If you were with us Friday night and you heard my little pitch at the offertory that night, I am one of currently 35 DCs, as they call us, throughout the entire conference of the U.S. and territories. And we work with Leslie Romaldi, who is the National Disaster Coordinator there at the UCC National Church. And the purpose of it is to really support our churches, to help to prepare for what might happen unexpectedly and to be able to respond when and if something does. So I explained to a lot of folks Friday night that our disaster ministry team had been kind of not functioning. They'd had a disaster coordinator. She left the area. They hadn't replaced her. And, our conference was kind of quiet for a while. And then 2020 hit. And we realized in the middle of a pandemic this time last year at our national conference, we were all reeling from this horrific wildfire season. And we realized that we needed to get our disaster ministry team back up and running yesterday. So a whole bunch of folks, I think, at our annual conference last year said they would be willing to help. So when you're looking at your screen, Sherry jumped in, and Janet jumped in, and Karen Caldwell jumped in, and Kat Allard jumped in, and we had a couple more folks jump in. And we very quickly started responding. And first thing we did is we sent $5,000 grants off to 4 different churches whose congregations were greatly affected, 2 down in Southern Oregon and 2 over on the kind of coastal northern part of Oregon that were just decimated, and or at least had people in their congregations that were really affected. We also then took offerings and have worked exclusively with, if you're familiar with Oregon, part of Southern Oregon, there's a little town, Phoenix Talent, and the fire went straight through there and just literally wiped out the town. And 50% of the school district, their students had no homes. So we've been working with the City of Talent School District, a lot of other organizations to help get some temporary housing going. And our conference is allowing people to move into a newly formed residential area by hooking up electricity and getting that paid for the first 3 months. And our very own Karen Caldwell, there on my second row, right below me. Yeah, we need to do this because Karen was instrumental on making that happen, and wrote the grant, got the funds, has been working with all kinds of people, and yeah, Kristen's eating dinner. And we just need to acknowledge all of her hard work. I didn't have enough time to talk about that Friday night, but I tried. And so we've been doing that, and fortunately this year, things have been a little easier, but our team now has had a little bit of a breather to try to figure out how to help churches get ready to go. So again, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Sherry and Karen and I are going to do our best to give you some ideas how to be prepared for anything, and be safer as a member of your church, have your church be a safer place, and then think about what you might be doing above and beyond that. So what I'd like to do quickly is do a little breakout introduction in the room. I'm going to put you into little breakout rooms, and I'm going to put you into pairs, or in case of the couples, I guess there'll be a threesome. And what I'd like for you to do is find out who you're in the room with, find out their name and their church, and a reason why they're here tonight, or what they're hoping to learn. What is it you're hoping to get out of this tonight? So we'll just take a couple of minutes to do that. And then when we come back, we'll have you introduce each other to everybody else. So here we go. Name, church, and why you're here tonight. Thanks, Karen. So we've got a couple of rooms. Here we go. Boop. Okay. I goofed. Hey Pam,
Hi.
how are ya?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. We're glad you're here. You get to be in a breakout room with me.
Oh, okay. Good. So you're in breakout. How many people? I'm a butterfly. I'm floating around the rooms.
Okay, well, right now, I only have two because that's all I can see, but I've got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine,
Oh,
in other rooms, and they're busy introducing themselves to each other.
oh, okay.
So
Nice.
finding out where they are and why are you here? You're here because you're a butterfly?
I'm a butterfly. So I am just listening a little and then going to each room and seeing how many people.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
if you stay for just a second, when everybody comes back, I'll introduce you first, and then you can flitter off the other way.
Is it
Yeah, we've
raining where
got
you
we've
are?
got
That's a
couple
good
of quite a
turnout.
few from Idaho, and we've got, let's see, Christ the Healer, Bridgeport, Waverly Heights, uh, several from Wright. Um, I don't know
That's a
who.
good turnout then.
I'm thrilled. I wanted to be outnumbered. Was really that's all I wanted.
Well, I know, and when you like the same thing with the climate change we're sitting, I'm like, oh, I hope people show up. You know?
Well, there's six great workshops, six great topics, and you can only
Yeah.
do one. And you figure, well, I can watch that one later. So,
Yeah. Right. I know, but still, it was just anyway, I'm glad. I know it's hard, but it's exciting, I think.
yeah. I'm just sending a little message here. Um, yeah, my goal was to have something good to record, so we'll, have that. I'm going to bring everybody back in just about 45 seconds. So, yeah, yeah, we were busy visiting and sharing, and
So
a few
you
more
have
people.
9 participants right now.
Yeah, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I would be number 10, so
Okay, I'm just gonna say 10 then.
yeah, 10 in the room.
Yeah, I'll stay for a little bit and then I'll
Yeah,
pop over to
yeah,
another.
yeah.
I just thought, oh well, I didn't need to do one, so I was helping in the climate one, and then I
Yeah.
thought, okay, now I'm gonna start popping because Jenny got in there. So
Yeah. Are other groups, I mean, they have a crowd, or they've got numbers?
yeah, not. I don't think they have 9. Well, who knows? They started showing up, but
Yeah.
there's a couple minister. Yeah, so I mean, they probably have quite a few from our church. There's probably about 9.
Okay.
I
All
forgot
right.
to write it down because I figured, well, I'll go back there later and see what they
Yeah.
ended up with.
So they'll be back in 52 seconds. So, okay.
Mm.
So yeah. Hey, Paula.
I, I
Paula, tell
actually,
us tell us which church you're with. Do you know how to
okay.
rename? Do you know?
Um, no, I was just about to talk and I accidentally took myself out of the
Oh,
room.
uh-oh.
So,
Zoop. Okay.
so anyway, I'm Paula. I'm from Ashland.
Oh, okay.
I'm retired from a position as the associate minister here at the church 2 years ago. So
Okay.
I've been at large and just starting to get more involved in the church again now.
And why did you decide to come to our session?
Well, I live near, where all the
Yeah.
houses burned
Oh,
down,
yeah.
and we evacuated that day and
Mm.
um, thought the fire was going to come up the hill, not down the valley as it did. So we just every time I leave the house or leave town, I'm very aware of the possibility that fires now.
Wow.
So anyway,
Wow.
I've been doing some preparedness personally, but
Yeah.
learn more.
Well, there's a small enough group of us here that I'm going to call people out, and then they're going to have to introduce somebody else. Paula went to tell her group who she was, and then she fell out of the room. So I will introduce Paula.
And then I can introduce all the rest of you.
All right. Well, you guys work that out among yourselves. But I'm going to introduce Paula Soul from Ashland UCC, and she's here because this is a subject near and dear to her heart because she had to evacuate in the fires of last year. And so I'm assuming she wants to hear a little bit more about it and be a little bit more ready next time. So I'm assuming that one, Paula, but yeah, based on what you said. So Paula, why don't you introduce somebody from your group and then they can tag
Okay.
around.
Well, let's see. We've got some folks here from the Wright Church in Boise. Carl and Carol. Carl Van Slyke and Carol Rivers, Wright. And they came because their dear friend Sherry is it helped to plan all this. So they are groupies of Sherry.
Well, I'll piggyback on that, and I'll introduce the Andersons, Diane and Eric Anderson from Portland area, and actually they come from Eastern Washington, I believe, and back in their history. And I lived in North Idaho for a while, so we were close by.
Ah.
And Diane and Eric, which church are you guys with?
Ainsworth, UCC.
Oh, Ainsworth, great.
Ah, okay.
Super.
And I'll just add that Eric, his career was in firefighting or fire. You were the former fire chief for Oregon, I believe, correct?
No, volunteer firefighter for 12 years, though.
Oh, okay, okay, volunteer.
And,
Okay, that's what. Okay.
Yeah.
And Diane has been doing emergency preparedness for her HOA. Is that right?
And earlier for
Yes.
the county
And earlier for the county in Eastern
Mhm.
Washington, right?
Yeah.
Good, good.
So
Wow.
very curious to hear what's on people's minds.
and I will jump in and try to introduce, and I'll do a poor job on Sherry because Sherry has amazing resume in this regard, as you probably all know, with her extensive experience in emergency preparedness for Forest Service and counties and you know, I don't even know, I can't even remember all the organizations, but years and years, decades of this experience. So she is our resident expert, I'm sure.
Oh, I don't know about that. Thank you so much. I think we have a lot of experts in the group.
So did we get everybody from that breakout room? Do we need to switch to the other one? Somebody introduce the rest of you.
Did Janet get introduced? Janet?
Not yet. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything from my group, or I can just introduce myself.
No,
Well,
Paula can do it.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I wasn't, I mean, I know
I
Janet,
dropped out before.
but I didn't get to hear your introduction. I actually left before you spoke.
Well,
Somebody
I've
else,
heard-
help me out.
I've heard Janet's introduction before, and it's very impressive as after 9/11, when she was associated with the Presbyterian Church in New York, she was the coordinator for the 9/11 response for, I don't know, about a year, 10 months, something like that.
Presbytery.
For the Presbytery. And so again, she's got great cred in this subject.
All right, we got a few people we don't know yet. I'm going to also introduce over Pam Rocio, who is our former moderator and now retired. She passed the gavel Saturday to my pastor, actually. And Pam is here because she's a butterfly. She's lurking in all of the meetings to see what we're doing and how many are here and learn a little bit from everything. So that's her reason for being here. So somebody else.
I'll introduce Kat from Christ the Healer. And she talked about, I think she has a church that doesn't really have a building. So the church itself is resilient. And she's here because she wants to, she's part of the committee, and but she also wants to foster resilience.
Good.
Thank you. Kristen from Bridgeport talked about their community is having a person in each knowledge camp tonight, and she chose this one. Bridgeport has been doing or talked about doing upgrades to the building so that they can be a better emergency site. And because of their relationship with the tiny houses project, housing people who are houseless, they're putting in a shower in their building, which again makes it a place that might be a good resource for people who are needing to evacuate their spaces.
Wow, very good.
And I get to introduce Karen, who's also with Kat, also as part of the team. And so another person who sort of had to be here, but also brings with them all kinds of experience. And she was recruited because of her proximity to the fires and experience with that down in Southern Oregon. And that's, we also saw some people impacted by the northern fires. So I'm really interested in hearing more about that experience.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, again, I want to thank everybody.
One more.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Rosalind, who's at the Waverly Heights Church in Portland. And their experience in the past year has been both with ice and with heat. So they had, people that lost all of their, utilities during the ice storm last winter. And they also had people who needed cooling during the summer heat wave, which they found out they were able to do because they had magically installed an air conditioner when they changed their furnace.
Wow, lucky. Wow. Well, great. Well, again,
And Carl and Carol, were you introduced already?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we'd like to do is invite you to put your name and your church and your email address in the chat room. We have a lot of materials that we would like to send out to you in an email so that you'll have an opportunity to find those things. So if you're not on the committee, it's more important that we get your name and church and email because we want to be able to get those materials out to you afterwards, because we're going to be talking about some resources and don't expect you to have them at hand, but we want you to have a copy of them available to you if you want to come back with your church. So be sure and give us the email so we'll get that. I'm going to do a quick share of my screen here as soon as I find the right thing to share. Okay. So, okay. So, again, here we are. This is our Be Ready for Anything workshop based a little bit on Matthew 25:13. Karen, Sherry, and I are going to be splitting this up in 3 sections tonight. And if you just put your name and the name of your church and your email, we will get those resources out to you. We are presenting most of the information tonight, and we will get this in the chat box, using the UCC Disaster Preparedness Manual for Churches. It was put together with the UCC Disaster Ministries and the Insurance Board, and we'll get this link to you. It's an excellent resource for your church, for individuals, for the churches, and for beyond. And so we want to make sure that you kind of realize it kind of presents the material in 3 parts, and that's how we're going to present the material to you tonight. So our first speaker tonight is going to be Karen, with Sherry, Sherry Collins. It's going to, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. Is going to be talking a little bit about how to make sure the folks in your church are safe. So our resident expert here is going to be, I'm going to spotlight you. Boop. And there you are. And if you're viewing on this and you just want to see Sherry, you can go up and view speaker or full screen, and she'll get even bigger. So
can you start the PowerPoint, or do you want me to do that?
Okay, you want me to get yours? Okay, give me a second. So I get the right.
So while she's doing that, so my goal, my little section, is to talk about emergency preparedness. From the introductions, it's been pretty obvious that, that folks have a number of people have a lot of emergency preparedness background. So feel free to jump in and give tips and advice as we go along. So I'm going to break this section up. We're going to really talk about putting together a disaster kit, emergency preparedness go bag for every home and family. And it's just coincidental that you guys are having this conference at the same time that it's actually National Preparedness Month. So woohoo, perfect timing to do that. It's funny for me coming to Idaho, coming from 2 states that have had lots of disasters, and coming to Idaho, because I hear it all the time, well, we don't have disasters in Idaho. Now, I know you folks in Oregon, you're saying, oh, we got disasters here, but I'm telling you, people in Idaho, they're kind of like, nah, we don't have disasters, but that's not true. Both of our states have a lot of disasters, and disasters are increasing, and they're getting more severe. And I'm not going to talk about climate change and the impact that has on weather-related disasters, but be prepared that going into the future, disasters are going to get more severe. They're going to be extended throughout different seasons. And so being prepared as individuals and being prepared as a church is going to be more important, if not this year, certainly moving into the future. And before your church can be prepared, you have to make sure that all the individuals within the church have some level of preparedness. So what I like to tell people is, as a family, take at least once a year, if not twice a year, to sit down with your family and your extended family and talk about what you need to do to put together an emergency kit that either you keep in your house, if that's the requirement, based on the nature of the disaster, or that you take it with you as a go kit if you have to evacuate. Next slide. Let me get a show of hands as we do this. How many people have been involved with a disaster? And I already heard a number of folks, but has everybody had a personal experience, and you can't include the pandemic because that affected us all, but with a disaster of some kind throughout their life?
Yeah, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, at least half of us.
Okay, great. How many people have already a disaster kit, emergency go bag? You can call it whatever you want. How many people have one of those?
Okay, 1. Yeah, mine.
Oh, come on, be
I
honest.
got it. 1 and a couple of wiggles.
Okay, so this is it. If you take away nothing else from me tonight, I want you, as homework, to go back to your house sit down with your family, take the lists that are in the resources, also in the preparedness manual for UCC, and put together your go kit. I know you've thought about it, but it's always put on the back burner. I want you to take it off of the back burner, and we're gonna put it on the front burner. This is this week's homework assignment. So as you put together this plan and this kit, the things you want to ask yourselves, your family, is, if we have to leave, how are we going to do that? Where are we going to go? What are we going to bring? And if we get separated, how are we going to reunite? Next slide. So there are 5 essential things that you need to put into an evacuation go bag. Okay, I hear this all the time. You'll see it on the news. People said, I had 10 minutes to evacuate, and I just left with the clothes on my back. I didn't even put shoes on. Okay, no, we are not going to do that, folks, because we're going to have that kit ready to go. That's part of the ready, set, go, and that's my theme for this section. Ready, set, go. So we're all in the ready state right now. So what are you going to put in the evacuation kit? Now I'm going to step back with my chair. Hopefully you can still see me. Now an evacuation go kit can be whatever you want it to be. So you can use you can use something like this. Okay. You can have a smaller one for like each family member, something like this, that you can sling over your shoulder if you have to leave. Mine, I actually have two. So this is one, this has all my sleeping and personal hygiene. You can see it's kind of dirty because it's been sitting in the garage because that's where I keep it. So this has got a sleeping bag. It's got a pillow because I'm kind of like, you know, that's really important to me. And I'll get back to the other thing. I have my hygiene stuff. Okay, I always take that with me. In there is one of your P's, which is pills. So if you take medications or anybody in your family takes medications, you want to make sure that if you don't take the actual pills themselves, which you should when you leave, but at least know your prescription number and how you can renew that on the fly, okay? Personal papers go in my kit. They actually go in this kit right here. So in personal papers, what does that mean? Well, if you look at the slide, these are all my personal papers in hard copy. I also have all my personal papers downloaded on a hard drive. I also have all my personal papers on a jump drive. And just because, who knows, I also back up everything on my computer onto the cloud. So what do you want to put in that digital documentation? You want to make sure you have a copy of your driver's license. You may or may not leave with your wallet. Hopefully you will. But if you don't, you want a copy of your driver's license so that you can prove who you are. You need to be able to prove where you live. So if your neighborhood gets evacuated and law enforcement closes down that area and then reopens it only to residents, which they usually do first, they're going to ask proof that you live in that neighborhood. So if it's on your driver's license, great. If you've changed resident addresses and you didn't change your driver's license, then you got to have something else. Utility bill, something that puts you in your neighborhood at your residential address. Okay, so proof of where you live. Then you need to have proof of either ownership of your home or rental of your home. So what could that entail? So that could be a copy of a mortgage, monthly payment, or a way to access that. Who is your mortgage with? How do you access that readily? Might be the actual deed to the house, title to the house. If you're a renter, do you have a rental agreement? Do you have a monthly rental invoice that you can show that places you in that house and shows that you have a relationship to that home? Does that make sense? Okay, so other things, personal, so we talked about prescriptions, we talked about who you are, personal papers. Some people put, like in mine, I have copies literally of the trust. I have copies of my passport in here. So anything that you think is an important document that you want a copy of, that you think as you evacuate that you're going to want to take with you. Okay, marriage licenses, birth certificates are usually really important. Investments, tax information. Tax information is really important because it too links you to your home, to the IRS, Social Security, all that kind of stuff. All right, any questions? Pets. I didn't bring my pet, but bring your pet. Never, ever, ever leave your pet behind. You need to bring your pet with you. I also have a pet. You can all see this. I actually have from the American Red Cross a little pet evacuation kit. It's got some food, medications that my pet might be on, some toys, just things that I need, how to get a hold of her vet. All of that is in this. It goes into my go bag. Say what?
No, sorry.
I didn't hear that. Oh, okay. pictures. Now, if you've digitally stored all your pictures, yay, just make sure you've all backed that up and you got good computer storage. That again goes back to the PC. But maybe you have some heirlooms in your home. Those are things that maybe you don't have them in your go kit, but it's definitely something when you leave that you're gonna wanna take with you. So I have like this. This is a drawing by my great grandfather. This is over 100 years old. Can't be replicated. Can't just copy it back. So if you've got fine art or just things that are really important to you, just remember where they are in the house and that you want to take it with you. So I'll tell you a story about how anal I got over this. So in 2003, I was working at Grand Canyon National Park, and we had a really bad drought. And we knew it was going to be a bad fire season. I was working in emergency services. My husband was a ranger. We knew that if there was a fire that hit the South Rim Village, that we would both be called to duty and have to work. So we couldn't spend the time to evacuate our home and clear it out. We had taken care of what was going to happen to my son. We had made arrangements with him and other families to take him. But you know, we still had this issue of not really being able to pull all those things that you do in cars to take off. We literally rented a storage unit about 50 miles south of the park and put all of our pictures and artwork and just important things. And then we told our neighbor and they joined and they did it too. And then another ranger did it as well. So we had a storage unit of all our stuff for the summer. Just to keep it protected in the event that we had a wildland fire. As it turned out, we never did. Okay, so again, 5 important things: prescription medication, those important papers, your pets, and the important things that you need to take with your pets, important pictures, photographs that can't be replaced, and again, computer storage. We already talked about that. Okay, any questions? All right, next slide.
There.
This is some of the secondary items that you can bring with you. Like I mentioned, I'm really into doing the hygiene. Make sure that you got toothpaste, toothbrushes. Food is really important. Non-perishable food, you want to take that. I have a lot of these collapsible little water things that I can put water in. A good book to read wherever you end up to be evacuated. If you ever spend any time in a shelter, it gets kind of boring. So a nice big book. If you use electronic readers, just remember that the batteries will die on that. Let's talk a little bit. Well, we'll talk about cell phones in a minute. So I have some dry food in here. And then for me, what's really important is that I be able to make coffee. So this is my French press. I can always find hot water. So I have that, and then I have some instant Gucci coffee in there. Let's see what else I got. Batteries, always carry extra batteries. Okay. All right, so that's just some of the stuff that I have in mind. A towel, stuff to take a shower with. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, these are really cool. These are these little towels. These are the towels that you see the divers in the Olympics. You know how they wipe themselves off after they get out of the pool. This stuff holds an amazing amount of water. So just this little towel. If you had to, use a shower in a shelter someplace, these little towels work really well.
Sherry, do you know what those are called so that we can look for them?
No, they're just microfiber, I think.
Okay.
I don't know, this doesn't say.
That's fine.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, all right. So we live in a world of electronics. Don't forget all your chargers, okay? So think about that, all the little cords that you need for all your different electronics and the ability to back up your phones since we're so dependent upon that. So carry a couple of these, make sure that they're charged. I have one here that this is a solar one. And it even has a little flashlight that I can never turn off, so that'll be on for the next hour. But I can charge my phone on this and just use solar power. Now, this is how nerdy I am. So I actually invested in a big solar panel, and so I can charge multiple phones. So you'll want to hang out with me in the shelter. And then I have rechargeable batteries. This is Goal Zero. They're an excellent company, and it makes some really good stuff. But so I have one of those. Okay, let me see if there's anything else. Oh, always have a good flashlight that will work. And you need to test that, because what happens is we get these flashlights, we stick them in the garage, and then we never touch them again. So make sure, again, put your kit together at least once a year. You want to go through the kit, make sure you got the stuff in there that you need, that things are charged, things are ready to go. If you're going to use it as a stay kit, you know, if there's a disaster and you have to stay put in your house, but again, all these emergency items are ready to go. We don't live like in hurricane country, which is probably a good thing, but if we did, you would know at the beginning of hurricane season that you would normally go through that. The thing about where we live in the Northwest is that we tend to have disasters that are little or no notice, okay?
Yeah.
So we have an earthquake, you don't get a lot of warning, like, you know, maybe a couple of seconds, if you have a good warning system. We have, you know, subsequent to that, we have tsunamis. We have wildland fires that you might get some warning because you can see it coming or it's starting. But I'll tell you, I've experienced a number of wildland fires that literally communities had no more than 10 minutes to evacuate, and really only 30 minutes that the thing had, you know, was even there, if that makes any sense. So because we have these short or no notice events, evacuations can come very quickly and leave us very unprepared. So it behooves us as a family, as individuals, to take the time out once or twice a year to go through our kits and get them ready. All right, again, all being part of ready. Next slide. Family communication plan. Really, if you have kids or you have grandparents, if you're an extended family in your household, as part of this putting the kit together, you want to spend some time as a family and talk about the plan of action of what you're going to do as a family, where you're going to go. If you just have to leave your neighborhood, where are you going to meet up in the neighborhood? So what's your neighborhood meeting place? Where's a safe place that you as a family can meet up to make sure that you're all okay? Where outside of the neighborhood are you going to meet up if you can? So dad, mom, spouse is coming from one place, kids maybe in school. Where are you going to all gather up in your community? What's the information to get in touch with everybody? Now, we all live with these cell phones, right? And on our contacts, it says your parents, my best friend, Ronnie, and you don't ever pay attention to the phone number, right, anymore? You don't. But if this fails, and it will, you may need that phone number to use those old-fashioned hard lines to communicate. So what's your phone numbers? What are the kids' phone numbers if they have cell phones? What are the spouse's phone numbers so you can call them? School information, and then the most important phone number that you as a family need to decide is you want to have one out-of-town contact that everybody calls. So, you know, it might be Aunt Joan in Kansas. And if we all get separated, we're all going to call in to Aunt Joan in Kansas to tell her we're all okay and where we are. that make sense?
Mhm.
What do you do if your cell phone fails? So what makes a cell phone fail? The biggest reason is you run out of battery. So everybody says, oh, well, I got a flashlight, Sherry. I don't need this big, crazy flashlight. I don't need this little crankcase flashlight. I got a flashlight on my phone. What drives down your battery the fastest?
The flashlight.
This, in the camera. So stop taking pictures of the disaster. Stop videotaping the disaster so you can send it to CNN. Hold on, because your battery life is precious, especially if you don't have charging units, okay? So battery life fails and cell towers fail. Cell towers fail because either they physically come down, like in a windstorm, while in fire, or the power goes out, and within 24 hours, their generator backup goes out. And if people can't get to it, if the utility company can't get to it, then it'll fail. A little trick, texting goes even if it seems like the cell phone, you can't get a phone call out. Texting will still work. It's all because of the bandwidth required. Oftentimes the phone call doesn't go through because it's actually jammed, because everybody's trying to do the exact same thing that you are. So always text. If you can't make a call, try texting. Again, that's where you call Aunt Joan in Kansas, text her if she has that ability, so you can tell her that you're all okay. All right. You can pull a family communication plan. This is from ready.gov. You can pull it off, fill it out. You want to put this in your go bag. You want to put it in the kids' backpacks. You want to put a copy of it in your wallet so you have it when you need it. Next slide. Emergency notification. So I'm all ready to go. How do I know when I need to go? Who's going to tell me I need to go? So this is the part of set, okay? I've got everything ready. There's a smoke on the horizon. They're telling me it's a bad winter storm coming in. Maybe I heard the earth shake. I don't know, or felt the earth shake. There's several ways government is going to try and get a hold of you, okay? The best way to know is what we call, and everyone should have one of these, is the Noaa weather emergency radio, okay? This is an example of one. This is a pretty red one. I also have a green one. And you want this set to the National Weather Service. I don't know if you can hear that. So it continuously plays you the weather on a loop reel, and you'll get really bored with that, and you'll say, that's terrible, Sherry. But the National Weather Service will also send you out emergency alerts for storms, for floods, for earthquakes, for all natural disasters. They will send out alerts through the Weather Service, and they will alert you. There'll be a big siren that comes through the radio to tell you that something bad is about to happen. So you can pick these up. They also have like crankcases. So if you're like me and you forget to, can't get that one open. They have a little crankcase so you don't have batteries anymore. They can't find the charging cord, which was my problem. You can get your kids to just crank and generate its own electricity and keep you all good. So this one even has like woo-hoo flashers if you need help. Ooh, look at that one. That's really cool. All right. Emergency radios, county websites. Pay attention to your local news. Look at the county website continuously, as long as you still have electricity in your house, of course, because they will put notifications on there. If you're in a neighborhood or community that is getting ready to be evacuated, you're on a pre-evacuation warning, and to get ready for that. So monitor those websites. It'll give you a lot of information. Most communities, I won't say all, but most communities have some kind of emergency notification system. It is an opt-in system. And what does that mean? That means that if you want to be notified on your phone, you have to sign up to get your cell number into their system so that public safety can notify you in the event of emergency, whether they want you to evacuate or to shelter in place. Now, how many people, here's my last poll question, how many people have a landline still in their house?
I do.
How many? I can't see. So how many people we got?
I'm counting. Hold on.
I can't have one. They won't install it. There's no.
I
service.
know it's getting really bad. To be honest, I don't have one. So, but I used to.
I have a landline, but it's voice over internet protocol. So
Oh, yes, and that's not gonna. Yeah,
it's not really.
So
I think-
anyway, for
I
those
think
of
only
you,
one person raised their hand.
Well,
so
and
one
ours, we
person-
never answer it because it's really for our fax machine, and the other people are like salesmen, so we don't answer it.
Okay, so if you can find this somewhere, used to be Radio Shack still sold these old princess phones. But this is what you want, okay? You want one of these old landline princess phones. Now, if you do have a landline, most people have portable phones, right? But that requires power in order to work. This phone only requires that you be hooked up to the phone line. And just because the power goes out does not mean that the phone line goes out. Oftentimes, the phone line will continue to work even if the power has gone out in your house. Little known tip. But the only way that you can use that to your advantage in a power outage is if you have a phone that does not require electricity. Those two are hard to find. Like I said, these are antiques. And but if you can find one in a yard sale or someplace and you have a landline still to your house, hold on to this. This is good to keep in your stay kit for sure. Okay. Can we go back to the last slide?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. Okay, let me make sure. Okay. Government social media alerts. Sign up to be on the sheriff's office Twitter feed if you're into that, Facebook, because those public safety agencies will send out alerts through all of their social media platforms to notify you if and when they want you to shelter in place or to evacuate. The last way that we notify families that they have to evacuate is literally going to door. But let me tell you, that's very person intensive. And it takes law enforcement away from other things that they actually need to be doing. But it is a last resort. I do hear people all the time tell me, well, nobody came to my house. Nobody told me that I had to evacuate. And I know all of these systems that I talked about, maybe one actually penetrates into your household, but the more redundancy, the more things that you sign up for, the more things that you have in your house so that you can receive notifications, the better off you're going to be. The last thing to tell you is make sure on your phones, in your notification, I don't know if you can see that now, you can't, that you are signed up for all the government alerts, okay? Amber alerts, emergency alert, public safety alerts, okay? All right, that's it on emergency notification. So to kind of in conclusion, the key here that we can go to the next slide. Get ready, put your kit together, check it twice a year, get your families together, do a family communication plan. Be ready and set to go in the event of emergency. So follow the instructions of what public safety tells you. Prepare your home if you have to evacuate. That may be shutting off appliances, shutting down the gas, locking your doors. Now, there's a couple of firefighters here. Firefighters hate it when you lock your door. Law enforcement loves it when you lock your door. I'm an ex both, and I'm going to tell you lock your door. Because you know what? We can get through your door. Okay, anybody that doesn't think we can get through your door, we can get through your door. Follow instructions of public safety, follow the directions that tell you how to egress out of your neighborhood? Pay attention to that. Do you only have one way in or out to your neighborhood? How are you going to evacuate out of that? Something to maybe practice ahead of time. All right. And then proceed. I always tell people proceed to the nearest Red Cross evacuation center and register with them that you have evacuated your community. Some communities have special procedures in their county, whether you tie a white rag to your mailbox or I think that's, yeah, you don't have to worry about that. All right. And then the last thing is just some resources. We'll post this, just both Oregon, Idaho have great resources. FEMA, ready.gov has great resources. Nothing that I've spoken about today is new or unusual. It's all posted on all of these websites. So that's it.
Great. Wow. So it sounds like a lot of us have some homework.
Yes, you do.
So I'm gonna challenge everybody to do this. This is totally overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming. So here's my challenge: pick one thing and do it once a month. This month, maybe find all your papers that you want to put together, and next month, you know, I know Sherry would have us all get this thing together like tonight, but you know, there's a lot of overwhelming things. Yeah, next week. But you know, if you just do one thing a week or one thing a month, you'll be that much farther ahead. And
That's true.
And something is better than nothing. So
Yeah. The one thing I'm going to tell you, everything that I showed you, I showed you pictures and illustrations of some very high tech stuff, but you can stay very low tech with this stuff. You can go to local thrift shops. You can find an old suitcase, an old bag that you can use to put all your family stuff in. I mean, doesn't cost a lot of money to put it together, an evacuation or go bag. And actually, most of the stuff is really coming from your home itself. So it's
true.
And
anyway,
isn't that is that in that UCC disaster preparedness manual that you popped up that you're going to
yeah,
send?
so this manual has tons of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got stuff that, I mean, it is like incredible.
Yeah.
But, you know, pick and choose. What's important to you? That's the most, like for me, the French press is pretty important. More important than the serum of Ipecac.
So we're going to switch topics here just a tiny bit. We're going to move on to, now that everybody in the church is ready, set, go. We're going to talk a little bit about the church itself. So I'm going to put you in pairs, and I'm going to give you a little assignment. Karen is going to blanch here. She hates this question. I'm going to ask you to think about your church. Okay? Picture your church in your head, your physical building, and you just happen to be in your church. Okay? You're the only one in your church for whatever reason. You just happen to be there by yourself. You're doing something, you're cleaning up or whatever. And the law enforcement guy runs in and he says, you've got 15 minutes to grab the 5 most important things that you need because there's an asteroid coming. It's going to smash your church and it's going to be gone. So what would you grab in your church building? I want you to share with each other. We'll talk for a couple minutes and then we'll come back and see what we thought about. So here we go. Hey, Sherry.
I was the only one in my room.
Oh, well, welcome back. Okay, you're right. Okay, we'll be a group. Okay, we'll be a group. So, what would you grab from Right UCC?
You know, that's a really good question because I don't really know that. You know, there's an old Bible in the sanctuary that survived. So the church has had 2 fires.
Okay.
And this Bible, which is like enormous, survived one of the fires. And it's actually under glass right now. So I'd have to figure out
That'd be cool.
break glass and take that. I don't know if they have a list of, you know what, I probably would just grab the computer.
I decided that I would break in. I don't know how the hell I do it. There's glass. I'd have to bust the glass and get through it to grab because I don't know if it's backed up anywhere. I don't know where it is. I'd grab the computer from the office, and then I'd go bust into the pastor's office and grab her computer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then and then I started kind of going through the building and thinking, oh, it's just stuff we could, And then for some reason, while I'm in the pastor's office, we have a singing bowl that we use all the time. I thought I'd grab the stupid singing bowl. It would be this, I don't know. To me, I think it would be like the one thing you could save because I thought, oh, there's artwork and there's a cross up on, trying to think of what else, what would be, if I had 15 minutes and I had time to get 5 things, the 2 computers and the bowl.
It's funny, like you said, the 5 things, because that also piggybacks on the 5 P's. What are the 5 P's of your parish? Oh, this is interesting. I gotta work on that. 5 P's of your
But I mean, it's a great question because every church is different. Your church has this amazingly old Bible.
Right.
How many people would know about that? I mean,
we ask Carl when he comes in.
Because, I mean,
he would. He'd actually know. I bet it's on his list. I'm fascinated to know.
But I was trying to think, what would be, I don't know, what would be the big 5 in our church? And everybody's going to have a different answer, So it'll be kind of fun to see what people come up with here.
Our church, there's a safe, but I'm assuming the safe it probably wouldn't withstand a flood, but it would withstand a fire.
Yeah, might not make through the asteroid. I tried to pick the biggest disaster I could. Most ridiculous one. Yeah, and I even thought about maybe Vicky's closet where I might grab some of her stoles or something because it would mean a lot to her. I don't know,
Oh, right.
They would be emotional things for her. The church, we could figure it out. I don't know. It's interesting.
Most of the physical building, you can rebuild that. So it's those sentimental things.
All right. Well, I'm going to give everybody the 1 minute thing, and then we'll see what kinds of stuff we come up with. I think this will be kind of a fun list of sharing to say,
Yeah. So it's like we talked about in the UCC, where do you store all the insurance information, all of that stuff?
Yeah. So we'll get everybody back and see what we're grabbing. Got a few more folks coming, so this will be kind of fun to see what all of the people from the same church have to say. See if you guys are grabbing the same stuff. So, was it hard? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I figured that only the pastor really know, or the, a church secretary kind of person really knows about the equivalent to the personal papers.
Yeah.
If I were there, I don't know what I'd say.
Yeah.
But
it's just fun to see what everybody came up with. So we're just going to kind of popcorn this. What sorts of things did you decide to grab before the asteroid hit?
The church directory and the laptops.
Ooh, good. Okay.
That's what I went for too.
We have a display of all of the pictures of all of the pastors of our church on the entryway hallway. That would be something that would be worth saving.
Nice.
Nah. Speaking as a pastor, I was like, nah.
Well, I kind of agree with that for the more modern pastors, but you might have a church that has really historic, irreplaceable frame photos of their founding pastor, or other things that are kind of irreplaceable that you might want to grab off the wall.
Sherry, tell them what you're going to grab from the same place Carl's grabbing the artwork.
Oh, he's grabbing that downstairs. What about the Bible in the sanctuary?
Yeah,
That was-
I was thinking that.
I mentioned that. I forgot to mention the China set from our founding pastor.
Communion? You mean like a communion set?
No, China, eating China.
You have special eating china in your church. Wow.
Serves how many?
Big lift.
We don't
I was
use it.
thinking, yeah, that's fascinating, actually. That might be a lot of dishes. I don't know if you can get all
Pretty
that out.
heavy.
It is.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
right.
I will mention that they already had a burned church Bible from one of the earlier fires. And I said, well, would you take that one or just let it burn up the rest of the way this time? So he hadn't quite decided.
Now, see,
One
I'm a
thing
little
I-
more practical. I'm going to break into the secretary's office and grab her computer hard drive, and then I'm going to go bust into the pastor's office through the glass door and grab her computer. And then I realized that the singing bowl that we use every week in church is in that office. So as long as I'm there, I might as well grab the dumb bowl.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, then, because I'm thinking about artwork and different things too. And I thought, maybe what I do is throw open the closet and grab as much of Vicky Stoll's and stuff, because I don't know which one she was ordained in. And things that are irreplaceable, we can get another communion doohickey and the cross and all of that. But, I don't know. Once I've got the two computers, after that, I'm not so sure anymore. Rosalind and
One thing that,
what are you grabbing?
One thing that I thought about is that our church and many other churches have full-time, pretty much, nonprofits housed in their churches. So all of the nice things that Sherry shared with us, we need to replicate those for those organizations that are permanently housed in our church or share our space that might have their permanent records in the church building.
Right. Yeah. So, listening to what everybody has given feedback, I talked about the 5 Ps for your own home and family. So this is like the 5 Ps of your parish. So things that you've mentioned, just precious items, those irreplaceable, maybe they're pictures, maybe they're the ancient Bible, the china. So those precious items of your church that you would want to come with you. Your papers, the important church papers, whether that's, somebody mentioned directories, grabbing the PCs from everybody's offices, because nobody knows how things are backed up. I get it. And then somebody mentioned pastoral items, what from that is really important to your church. I need one more P. Then we would have the 5 Ps of your parish. That's another homework assignment. Think about that. Huh?
People.
The people that are in the church? Yeah. I'm thinking. All right.
The directory, yeah.
People. There you go. People. Records of people or people that are actually there. All right. There we go.
I think we need to come up with a P word for the tenants or the nonprofits. I mean,
the nonprofit.
I think that was really important.
So brainstorm that as we go on.
Well, that was an excellent exercise, because the point of that whole exercise is that the church needs an inventory. Because as somebody mentioned, it's probably a good chance that the only person that knows is the pastor. So I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger, and I'm going to share something here with you as soon as I find it. What I want to bring to your attention is that I gotta get to the right. That's not it. hold on. I'm trying to get to, nope, wrong one. What I want to say is that it's really important to have, I really drove that home, is that you need to have a hard copy, but you also need to have a digital copy. And here's the trick. You should have one at the church, but you should have one off-site. So if you're keeping that digital copy on the cloud, it's out floating around in outer space somewhere, that's a great idea. But if you have a hard copy, does the moderator keep it? Does the pastor keep it? Does the head of the building committee keep it? Does the custodian keep it? Somebody should have that hard copy somewhere to get back to. Janet, you're
Hard copy, I lost you the connection for a minute.
okay.
Hard copy of
So
what?
like if you have a written inventory,
Oh, an the
an
inventory.
inventory, you should have a
Okay.
hard copy and a digital copy, and there should be
Gotcha.
both of them on site and somewhere off site.
Gotcha.
Because I'll be honest, and I think Kristen made a point of it, is that if she's in the church, she doesn't know where to look for stuff. If you're the past moderator, I know where to look. I would immediately grab that hard drive, but I can guarantee that most of the folks in my congregation wouldn't even think about it. They would be busy grabbing the communion stuff or something else because everybody would prioritize differently.
Well, are you saying the inventory is just of the things that you're going to take out if you have 15 minutes, or of everything?
Need to have it what's in the church, and
I think that's good
is
for insurance purposes and
your
so
insurance purposes. Yeah. Absolutely. Insurance has changed over the years. You don't always have to have a huge. I lost all of our household goods in a fire in a moving van. We got to the other end. Yes, we got to the other end of our move. We were young and newly in the military. And when we left our duty station in Georgia and got to California, the truck had caught on fire, gone up between two loads, and we didn't know if we had a furnished apartment or not. When we got there, what hadn't burned up, the firemen had stomped on. So there wasn't a whole lot left. And I spent hours in the equivalent of a Walmart or a Target wandering up and down the aisles with a pencil trying to remember what I had in the kitchen. Because in order to get reimbursed even a little bit, I had to give them a whole list. One of the things that needs to happen is you need to have a conversation with your insurance company about whether they are going to demand a list from you or whether they are just simply going to pay you X dollars. And it depends on your insurance. A lot of them will simply give you whatever you are insured up to, and they don't care. And if you have not been careful about bringing that up, or you've been cheesy with your insurance, those of us that own homes know a lot of times our insurance agents call us and they say, oh, we need to back, it's harder, it's more costly to replace. The other part of that horror story is my father had made me all kinds of furniture when I was a child and had made furniture for our home. And when I tried to claim it, they explained to me that it was not an antique, nor was it worth what a new piece of furniture was, and I got almost nothing for it. Meanwhile, no beds, no dressers, no bookstands, no, anything. So a conversation with the insurance company is a really, really smart idea. And you need to know what your deductible is. Mm-hmm. And you need to have it in reserve because they will obviously give you so much, but you're going to be responsible for a portion of that. And again, to replace things, you're only going to get a piece of it. So these are conversations and questions that you have with your insurance company. In order to make sure that, you're covered completely. And hopefully you've got a finance committee or somebody working with that insurance company. Again, you should have a digital and a hard copy of whatever those insurance papers are, and they should be kept on site and off site somewhere. And know who's got them. Okay. So other things that you can do to prepare for your church. Let's see, I'm gonna make sure I get my right slides here. Okay. Other things that you can do to help make your church ready to go. If I'm visiting your church and the lights go out and I've got my cell phone and my flashlight's working, do I know what the address or the phone number of the emergency contacts of the building I'm in? I'll be really honest with you. I had to call the sheriff's department for a situation and ask them to do extra kind of driving around our building in anticipation of some things that fortunately didn't happen. And I couldn't remember the address. And all I could say is, my God, we're right next door to you. So they told me the address. But I was embarrassed because I know where my church is, but for the life of me, I couldn't give them the number of the building. If you're a nonprofit and you're in the building and something's going wrong and you're calling 911, you certainly aren't going to know the address, the phone number of the building, and who to contact in an emergency. They should be posted near every phone, every door, every room, every light switch, just on a little 3x5 card. Sherry mentioned signing up for emergency alerts. Somebody responsible in the church needs to have that information and know what's going to happen with it. Another thing that you can do is, I'm a retired teacher principal, and as you know, if you go to a motel or a school, there's always evacuation route maps on the walls, on the doors, and you need to have those posted in your building. Again, if your building is being used by other groups, they don't know all the hidey holes and where all the hallways and everything else goes. How many people have a clue where the emergency shutoff valves are for the gas, water, and electrical breakers? I'll guarantee that whoever cleans your church probably knows, and maybe the pastor, but I guarantee you the choir has no clue when they're there on Wednesday night practicing and something goes AWOL. You should make sure that multiple leaders in the church know this information, or it's marked, or it's mapped, or it's something. And again, we've talked about backing up documents, hard and digital copies, and keeping a copy both on and off sites. Keep your insurance agent information up to date and check with them about that deductible and the reserve. One of the things I did as a principal is I invited my local fire department chief to come tour my church building. And I highly recommend this. Many of our churches have been added on and in a funky way. And there's little hidey holes and little weirdnesses to them. I was a principal at a building that had two different chunks, one from 1907 attached to something from 1950, and the ceilings and the up above in the attics were it was a special kind of firefighting technique that they were going to have to use that our fire chief had no clue. And he wanted to bring all of the volunteers in his department up to practice and look at that particular situation that they wouldn't know until you got into it. He was very thankful that I asked him to come and tour my building. And I know our church in Hood River has had a number of additions and where the boiler room is, and it's not marked. And they're going to be looking for that stuff. So just invite them over for a little walkthrough. You can also do that with law enforcement. We housed a shelter, and occasionally folks in a shelter have personal issues that cause behaviors that are problematic. They don't always happen outside. It may be important that law enforcement understands the ins and outs of your building. Some of us have some really weird hallway situations. Somebody mentioned a church directory when they were talking about what to grab. It needs to be updated. And I'm going to suggest highly that you really give some thought about who is in your church. I'm going to share a piece of a document that comes from the Mormon Church. See if I can get the right one here. They have really put in some really well thought let me make sure I get it. Nope, wrong. Sorry, wrong one. They have done some really nice work creating their disaster manuals. And one of the things that they do is they have gone through and, oh, I'm not grabbing it. I'm sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties here. They have gone through and identified everybody in their church that has mobility issues, that might be needful of help evacuating because they don't have family members or neighbors that would help them with that. They've identified people who have medical needs, might be on oxygen. They have you kind of brainstorm the whole list, and this document I'll also share with you. But they've gone through that who is in your church that might need assistance. They also have you. Are you going to find people that have skills? Do you have people like my husband that owns every tool at Home Depot and knows how to use it? And if you have some issues, do you know who you can call that they have tools or trailers or equipment to bring in? We had a situation here in Hood River where a man decided to do 80 miles an hour over the bridge that connects Hood River and White Salmon on the Washington side. And when he got to the end, he couldn't quite stop. So he plowed into the distribution center for the natural gas for 5,000 residents and turned it off the week before Christmas. It was extremely cold and nobody had heat. And none of us knew which members of our churches had heat and which members of our church had none. Once we got through that, this last summer, we mentioned the fire and the ice. I realized that I didn't know who had air conditioning either. So I got a hold of our church prayer chain. I asked them to call everybody on the chain and check to see if they had a way to stay cool. One of our elder members had sold her old house and had bought a brand new house with brand new HVAC, and she couldn't get her air conditioning to work. So the person who was responsible for calling her wandered over to see what was going on, and lo and behold, they had sold the house to her without the air conditioning. She and her children thought they'd paid for it. There was no air conditioning in the house, and it was 116. Needless to say, all the neighbors and everybody jumped on that and made sure Shirley was okay. But she was 85 years old and couldn't figure out why her cooling system wasn't working. So it's important to know that kind of stuff and have a way to check on people. Especially if there's power outages or we talked about what happens with the cell phones go out, the landlines are out. How would you get a hold of people in your church if all of those were unavailable? We did a fundraiser thing here where I actually created a little map and all the people that lived together was on a route. And I've realized that little route information, one person could drive to 5 or 6 houses in a little area and check on people just to make sure you're okay. So those are just some ideas about how can you update your directory and take inventory of your needs and realize that some people may need help for all of these different things. The question is how do you count for everybody? The other thing is if you have an emergency at your church, just like my school, we all flew out to the back playground. We taught 5-year-olds, and I was terrible. I pull a fire alarm anytime, except for lunch, because it made lunch ladies upset. But I had 5-year-olds that knew exactly what to do and could take a substitute with them because they knew where to go. If you have an emergency in your church, where are you going to all go to? Are you all going to try to go through the same door? Are you all going to have enough presence of mind that you have 3 exits and the one that's not usually open would work, like ours? Who's going to get people down the stairs? Who's going to help, what's available? And so if something were to happen when you were having a church event, what does that emergency plan look like? So that brings me to the idea of a church disaster ministry team. I encourage each one of you to consider who is going to talk about these kinds of things. These are things that you can do every month. These are little checkoff things. You don't have to do them all right away again. But who, what, and how is going to be responsible in your building for this work? who's going to encourage your congregation to be safe, and who's going to make sure your church is safe? Could it be a chair of each of the committees? We had a prayer team that was the perfect vehicle for calling people. They do it for prayers. Why not do it to find out if the air conditioning is working? Who's got the skills? Do you have somebody that knows the building? Do you have somebody that knows the finances? Do you have somebody that, can deal with those kinds of things? And is that the group that's going to be the ministry team that the pastor knows who to get a hold of and get together in the case of an emergency? It's a situation that calls on being done. And I hope that that's something that you'll consider doing for your church. So before I turn this over to Karen, who's going to tell us what else we can do, I'm going to ask you to humor me a little bit by doing a little work. So what do you think might be the 3 most likely disaster situations that could happen in one of your churches? Don't everybody talk at once.
Earthquake.
Earthquake. Okay.
Fire,
Fire? In the building, or wildfire, or just fire?
just fire.
All right. Just fire. Okay.
Extreme
And
heat.
what's our last one? Okay.
Extreme weather.
Extreme heat. Weather. Okay. We'll go ice or heat. All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about an earthquake first. What is likely to happen? We have an earthquake, and what's going to happen?
Building's gonna fall down.
What's going to fall down?
The building.
Buildings will fall. Say it again.
No power.
No power.
Gas leak.
Yep.
No water.
Okay.
No clean water, probably.
Okay. Couple more.
Bridges will fall down. Nobody will be able to leave.
Ooh.
And there will probably be fires.
Probably.
Explosion.
Okay. Oops. I love the way things just happen. Okay. All right. Okay, let's talk about fire. What's an outcome of that? What's going to be happening?
Have water damage from firefighters,
Oh,
smoke damage.
No place to live.
No place to worship in this case, right? Is it the church building?
no, it jumped. It jumped.
Okay, okay.
Why my mouse keeps flying around, sorry.
I attended a church in San Francisco's Chinatown for a while. And so their buildings, Cameron House, had been through an earthquake. And in the case of the fire, there really was no one to fire. Their building survived the earthquake, but they blew it up to stop the fires.
Ah, okay.
So you may not have anyone to help you fight the fire. You may be on your own.
That's a good one. Okay, let's jump to extreme weather, ice or heat. What are the outcomes here?
Loss of power.
People die of exposure.
Yeah, health impacts. Yeah, generally, yeah.
Okay.
Some people lose. Some people like they will lose water because the pipes freeze or something like that.
And sometimes there's a loss of gas lines. With extreme cold, they will also be impacted with that, and they can break. So now you've got, things exploding.
Well,
And
and there's the,
access to food and medicines.
Mhm.
May not be able to get there.
Okay,
yeah, you have to have your 3-day emergency kit of food and water.
there you go.
Yeah, which is not one of the kind of emergency kits we talked about,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna be on your own until you can get out safely.
Mhm.
You're right. You're on your own. Yeah, you are on your own. So, and earthquake certainly is the same way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even with fires, you might be on your own for a while. So, what are you going to need? What, we're obviously, I heard somebody say their emergency kit, and I heard food. And
Yeah,
I
food
think
and water
food and water.
for 3 days minimum.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's been
Things
up
that you
to
can eat
7
without.
days. That's actually been up to 7 days, and for earthquakes, 3 weeks.
Wow.
Mhm.
I mean, a major earthquake, not
Mhm.
Yeah.
7
Yeah.
days to
Because
21
we've
days.
got transportation, nothing's coming for us. So would people need clothing maybe?
Yeah, full gas tank.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Definitely need heat or
And
cooling depending on what, the situation is.
there may
So,
be some medical needs for people who need oxygen or on oxygen, where they
yes.
need
Right.
power.
Yeah.
Or we
Yeah.
have a member that has dialysis.
Yes.
So transportation in that case is critical.
Yep.
Um,
So, while we can't necessarily prevent these things from happening, we can mitigate maybe
Wake up.
what happens a little bit by being some prepared, but we certainly
Bedtime.
can prepare
That's the
for
reason.
these outcomes. Okay. So kind of that's my sum up, is that by being ready, set, and going
mhm.
at both levels, we can help to handle these outcomes. So Karen Caldwell is going to bring us kind of into the end about you're okay, I'm okay, and what can we do next? I'm going to take my spotlight off and I'm going to find Karen and spotlight her. And Karen, I'm going to get your PowerPoint up. Is that what you want?
Yes, please.
Okay, make sure I get the right one here. Okay. Hold on. All right, ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so my topic is after the disaster. What do we do as a church community? What can we do to help people survive? And I think I'll skip the discussion questions and just go right on through this. So this is a picture of people 2 days after the fire in Southern Oregon last year, and they are looking around. You can see the place is still smoky. They don't know where they're going. Emergency equipment still blocking the roads. And that's kind of the situation at the beginning of the end of a disaster event. Next slide. So I'm no expert, actually. I have no expertise like my colleagues here. I have no background in disaster ministries. I just have my experience as a member of the community in our region that burned last year. Now, these particular pictures are of my oldest son, Joshua, and we can see him looking through the debris of his manufactured home after the Alameda fire. He's looking for anything that might have survived. You can see what's left of Joshua's beloved truck in the bottom left there. Nothing except the metal frame is left. Even the tires burned. But he fared better than many of his neighbors, even though he had nothing left from his home. Some people in his mobile home park had to leave Southern Oregon for good because they just had nothing left, including connections and jobs and a place to live. Joshua was lucky. He was able to move into a rental with his girlfriend, so they're doing fine. So next slide. So my topic is really after the disaster, the church's role in disaster response and recovery. And this is what I've learned. I've learned that FEMA and the Red Cross cannot do everything that needs to be done to enable people to recover from a disaster. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. What help do we need from our community and from our religious communities as well to help us survive the recovery period? Next slide. And what I've learned is that the worse the disaster is, the more the whole community needs to come together. And that includes the church to help people recover. Next slide. I thought of 3 kinds of help that congregations can provide. And those 3 are, number 1, compassion, number 2, advocacy, and number 3, service. Next slide. And number 1, the compassion, you can imagine if you've been through a disaster, or if you haven't been through a disaster, the kind of shock that people experience. People are experiencing trauma, they have PTSD, they are angry, they are in grief. I've known people who are having flashbacks, people who have become depressed, and what they need is all the things that loving community can provide, including patience and listening and accompaniment and solidarity and connection and love. In order to show compassion after the fire in our community, multiple organizations set up listening opportunities at the relief centers, places or desks or rooms or just, corners of rooms where people could just listen to people who needed to kind of talk about their experience out loud. We've had mental health providers who've stepped up. We've had pastors who've exhausted themselves, friends and neighbors who've been there just to listen. Next slide. Number 2 is advocacy. And this is where churches' ongoing ministries really come into the forefront around advocacy issues. As we know, climate is making all of our disasters worse than they used to be and more frequent. So our advocacy on climate health is just an ongoing thing that we need to be engaged in. What we learned from our experience is that disaster preparedness is not just for the home and for the church, but for the community as well. In our locale, our local fire departments ran out of water while they were trying to put fires out. And that was because of poor infrastructure. The water just stopped flowing. We had to take, not me, but the firefighters had to take fire trucks offline at the fire, drive them from Phoenix or Talent back to Ashland, fill them up with water, and come back to fight the fire. That's what was going on. We also had, as many of the evacuation programs that you can subscribe to just failed. The evacuations were chaotic. People that complained about getting no alerts at all. They just ran when they saw the flames, or because their neighbors knocked on their door, or because police knocked on their door and told them they had 3 minutes to get out. Fire and police who worked this fire expected many more deaths, many deaths. We had 3 people died during the fire in our area. No more than that. Thank God, because of the immense efforts by people on the ground alerting each other. We also find that there are larger kinds of concerns about recovery, not just the immediate response. but how we build back is really important. In our area, the City of Talent, which was badly damaged during the fires, they began immediately after the fire to hold town hall meetings so that they could gather feedback, get advocacy from their community about what was important for building back. They made decisions based on that community feedback, and those decisions included deciding to encourage mobile home parks to rebuild instead of selling their land for some other purpose. I mean, you can't control what people sell or why they sell or who they sell to, but the city just was in its position to encourage those mobile park owners to please stay in the business. And most of them have so far. Price gouging. We had one situation where a mobile park owner decided to charge the residents for cleaning up the space with the toxic elements that were left after the fire. This was completely unnecessary because FEMA covered the costs of the cleanup. So the city had to advocate on behalf of those people who live there to say, no, these people do not need to pay for the cleanup. Building back faster with fewer building requirements was one of the policies the City of Talent took on. Building requirements have improved and increased in costs over the years, and some of the buildings that burned were built under different circumstances, and rebuilding under the new stipulations was going to be very expensive. So the city made it a policy to try to pull back to the original building requirements of the era in which those lost buildings had been constructed, so that people could build back faster. There were people who testified about the number of people from Talent who had moved away to other communities because they had no place to live and no place to work. So one of the things that the City of Talent has done is to sponsor city-run transitional housing so that some of those people can come back and rejoin the community that they love. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And another decision that the city made was to build back as green as possible, to build back in terms of the plants around buildings and the sustainability, the protection you could get from a building, and to build back in ways that cause less climate change. So that was all part of the advocacy that happened community-wide in our area. But there's also advocacy that needs to happen on behalf of individuals. There are so many people who have needed case managers and advocates to go with them, to accompany them through the process of applying to FEMA, getting their insurance paid off, and qualifying for other systems and requirements that were run by state and federal agencies. Those were really hard, and they're still really hard for people to get through those processes all by themselves. So we've had people who, what? So we've had people who had volunteers to provide some of that, and have hired, or organizations have hired case managers to help people get through that. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. I already did that one. Okay, so then the third part of helping recovery is providing service. And in our case, the community has stepped up. Next slide. And these became ways that the community stepped up, allowed the churches also to participate in those recovery efforts. This includes the people who started feeding people immediately after the fire, even before they were able to return to their homes after being evacuated. So we've had organizations pull together resources with restaurants. We've had people, I love this one. The next slide is, I mean, you understand sandwiches, right? But the next slide is people on bicycles.
Keep going. Okay.
No, stop right there.
Oh, all right.
No,
Yeah, here we are.
no, okay. I thought one of the things that happened in the community was the creativity of their ways of helping people. So for a while, roadblocks were set up to keep cars from coming into evacuation zones that had been impacted by the fire. But there were people stuck in their homes in those zones. And so people collected volunteers on bicycles to run supplies in and out of the evacuation zones so that people could have food and necessities back in their homes as they were rehoming themselves. Next slide.
So cool. Or restaurants.
And another thing that happened was the places where people were getting food immediately after the fire turned and expanded, giving out all kinds of help, not just food, but clothing and household items and gift cards, and providing listening posts and toys for kids and school supplies and toiletries and pet food. And Paula knows all about this because her daughter is head of one of the organizations that was providing that kind of help. Next slide. So with all the creativity going around in this community, the churches are also able to step up, join what's going on in the community, and do some of their own stuff as well. One of the ways that we provide service is by giving to One Great Hour of Sharing. And that's our disaster funding source in the United Church of Christ. One Great Hour of Sharing. Every time you give there, you're helping people who are going through disasters. Another way to help is to provide shelter in the church. Now, we couldn't do that in this particular experience of fire because the fire was headed towards our church. So we didn't open up our building. But it's a possibility if you're not in the line of the disaster that's happening. And then the other, like the big piece that we did immediately was helping the people who were part of the church who had been burned out. Now, both of our churches in the Rogue Valley, the Medford Church and the Ashland Church, had members who were burned out. And there are ways that we were able to help as congregations, help our own people get rehoused. One of the ways is that we had access to funds from One Great Hour of Sharing, our national funds from our disaster ministries, and also a fire relief offering that was taken here in the Central Pacific Conference right after the fires. So we had those resources from national and from the conference, and money that we raised in our own congregations to help our members. And we did that. And we kept helping them with funds, with temporary hotel costs, with contributing household goods, and until everyone in our churches were rehoused. Next slide. One of the programs that started up was the Fire Relief Center, and they set up a central location in Phoenix. And this was the group that was providing all kinds of goods, gift cards, food, and ways of helping people who were going through evacuation and houselessness for a certain period of time. This was a mutual aid center, and we were able to contribute to that program. So that was one kind of service we were able to get connected with. And there was another one, which is for long-term recovery, that we were able to get connected with in Talent. And I'll talk about that one more in a minute. Next slide. So the Fire Relief Center, also called the Fire Mutual Aid Center, was set up in an shop space in Phoenix. And one of the things that we did with the money that y'all gave for the Central Pacific Conference offering last year was $2,000 that came from that offering that we donated to this mutual aid program. And this was a particularly important program because it helped people who were not eligible for FEMA assistance. So a lot of Latinx people, people without documentation, people who were part of our school districts but not eligible for FEMA, got help in the Fire Relief Center. I'll see I'm running out of time. Okay, well, the other thing that we contributed to was the service of providing funding for the Gateway Transitional Housing Project. That was the project of transitional housing and talent that I mentioned earlier. And we also used money from that same Central Pacific Conference offering. This time we used $11,000 to contribute to this project of setting up transitional housing. And that was money that is going to go to people as they move into as we move people into the transitional housing park. Next slide, please. There will be hookups for water and electricity, and some of the money that you gave to that special offering last year is going to pay for those utilities. Next picture. This transitional housing project has been a truly community-wide project. The partners include the City Council and Mayor of Talent, People's Bank, who donated, I can't remember, hundreds of thousands of dollars, the state of Oregon, who gave millions of dollars, the Phoenix Talent School District, who is in touch with all of the families of the school district that lost housing. And these people got together to break ground in June, and you probably can't see their faces, but the people in this picture who are all partners in this project are just laughing themselves crazy, throwing dirt around at this ground opening. So I just wanted to say that even recovery can be fun. Next picture. Now this is something that happened just a week ago. This was a tour that our volunteers at Medford UCC were given to tour the land that is being turned into this transitional housing park. And we were there with other partners, including Road Climate staff who were helping to run the Fire Relief Center, including Talent City Councilors, including a group called the Longer Term Recovery Leaders, including Talent Urban Renewal staff and other recovery volunteers. We all gathered together to see what this lot looks like now that it's been sort of prepared for the arrival of trailers that people would be living in. The park is ready for paving next week. It's all been graded, and the spots for the trailers all set apart. And trailers will be moving in after the place is paved, beginning next month.
Exciting.
Next picture. So once those trailers are put in place and residents start to move on, our members at Medford UCC will greet them with welcome baskets that are filled with cleaning supplies and kitchen goods and gift cards. This is part of another organization, our local long-term recovery group, that has been working together with us in the UCC, with Methodist and Presbyterian churches to purchase and distribute these welcome baskets. Next picture. And this is how we have all worked together as a community to help our community recover. And here we are a year later after the fire, between September 8th, 2020 and September 8th, 2021. And that's as far as we've gotten. We've still got a lot of people not in permanent housing, but we are continuing to work together. This is a picture of the inside of the Ashland UCC, which held a COVID-safe, distance-safe event to commemorate the fire of a year ago. And it just reminds us of all the volunteers and the organizations, the elected officials, the foundations, the friends and neighbors, and everybody who has gotten us as far as we've got. And that is all I know about church and responding to recovery efforts after a disaster, because as small a part as I have played, I got to do it because I'm part of a church community. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Wow. Bravo. So we are at the end of our session tonight. We had to lose a couple in the middle, but we appreciate all of you that stayed. I also want to say thank you to anybody that's watching this on the rerun. Hopefully that you learned a few things. You've got a couple of things on your to-do list. And I want to say thank you to everybody. I want a special thank you to Sherry and Karen for their parts. And if you're interested in joining our disaster ministry team, because this is at the heart of you, we'd love to have members. And I'll be sending you an email. And we hope that you've had a great evening. And thank you again for coming. And be well, be safe, and get your to-go bag ready.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, stop recording. There we go.